High in the Mountains of Ecuador by David Messner. A mother and her daughter sit on the ground where they will grow tomatoes. The wooden frame will become a greenhouse. It was late afternoon when I arrived in the village of Anguanaja. I had traveled by truck into these green mountains and then walked along a curvy road. All I carried in my backpack was clothes, water, and a sleeping bag. I didn't know what I would eat or where I would sleep that night, but I did know that I was looking for a farmer named Don Segundo. Earlier in that day, I had seen a pig riding on the roof of a bus. I had seen women dressed in pink pulling potatoes from the ground. I had seen dogs without leashes run to the edge of the road and bark at me. Life in the Andes Mountains was very different from my life in the United States, and my head hurt from trying to understand it all. I had been excited about working on farming projects in Ecuador after college, but everywhere I went, people stared at me. I didn't look, dress, or speak like anyone else up here. Angahuana was a small village on a steep mountainside. The stone road curved past houses, a church, and an elementary school. Behind each house were fields from where families grew crops, such as beans, onions, and potatoes. Meeting Don Segundo. Don Segundo's house was made of bricks, wood, and dried mud. Hopefully, this was where I would sleep for the night. From the road, I shouted, "Hola, hola, Don Segundo." A short man in a blue coat appeared from behind the house. His brown eyes sparkled and his whole face smiled. "You must be David," he said in Spanish. "You can sleep here tonight. Come, let me show you my mora plants." For the rest of the afternoon, Dos Segundo and I dug into the ground and planted blackberry bushes. We also talked about how we would work together for the next 2 months. Our biggest project was building greenhouses so that people in Angahona could grow tomatoes and sell them down in the city. Before it got dark, Don Segundo and I hiked up a narrow path to put up his cows in the corral for the night. On our way down, the cold air was silent except for the sound of our footsteps. Across the valley stood a giant snow-capped volcano. A family dinner. We ate dinner in a dark but cozy kitchen. But Don Segundo's wife cooked over an open wood fire. We sat on log benches and ate habas. We dipped the tasty beans in salt, sucked the beans, and tossed the shells into a bowl. Don Segundo's two daughters were about 10 and 12 years old. They cuddled together in a blanket and rested their bare feet on the floor. They giggled and whispered to each other in Quichua, a language I couldn't understand. I don't think they had ever seen a person with white skin and green eyes. Our main dish was warm potato soup with meat. After dinner, we sipped tea, and everyone seemed more relaxed. The girls stopped speaking in Quichua and asked me a question in Spanish. I told them about my life in the United States. I described the dry Arizona desert. I explained that instead of growing our own food as they do, we buy it from a grocery store. Then I showed them a picture of my brother, sister, and parents. The girls thought it was funny that we had 4 cats, a dog, and a turtle. Feeling at home, even though this land and the people had seemed so strange at first, I began to realize that we had many things in common. This family had also been nervous about meeting someone from the other side of the earth, but here we were in their kitchen after dinner, laughing, talking, and telling stories. When my eyelids began to droop, Don Segundo showed me to a room with a small bed. I lay down and thought of all the new things I had seen, smelled, and tasted in just one day. Soon I heard whispering from the room next door, kids' eyes spying on me through a crack in the wall. I waved to the wall, and it seemed to giggle back. Then I said goodnight, clicked off the lone light bulb, and fell deeply asleep, high in the mountains of Ecuador. Number 1. What is the narrator's main problem at the beginning of High in the Mountains of Ecuador? Use details from the text to support your answer. Number 2, Part A. The section Feeling at Home most likely refers to how the narrator A. had to stay in Ecuador for months, B. began to feel comfortable in Ecuador, C. thought about his life in Arizona each night, D. lived with a family that he found strange. Part B. Which of the following 2 details from the text best support your answer to Part A? A. The family had been so nervous about meeting someone from the other side of the earth. B. But they were in the kitchen after dinner, laughing, talking, and telling stories. C. When my eyelids began to droop, Don Segundo showed me to a room with a small bed. D. Kids were spying on me through a crack in the wall. E. I waved to the wall and it seemed to giggle back. Number 3, Part A. Based on the passage, which word best describes Don Segundo? A. Stern and hardworking. B. Curious and intelligent. C. Witty and entertaining. D. Friendly and welcoming. Part B. Which two details from the passage best support your answer in Part A? A. I didn't know what I would eat or where I would sleep that night, but I did know that I was looking for a farmer named Don Segundo. B. Don Segundo's house was made of bricks, wood, and dried mud. C. His brown eyes sparkled and his whole face smiled. D. Before it got dark, Don Segundo and I hiked up a narrow path to put his cows in the corral for the night. E. When my eyelids began to droop, Don Segundo showed me to a room with a small bed. Number 4. Read the paragraph. Life in the Andes Mountains was very different from my life in the United States, and my head hurt from trying to understand it all. I had been excited about working on farming projects in Ecuador after college, but everywhere I went, people stared at me. I didn't look, dress, or speak like anyone else up here. Angahuna was a small village on a steep mountainside. Why does the narrator say, "and my head hurt," in this paragraph? A. All the traveling and new smells was making him sick. B. He was having a hard time adjusting to his new surroundings. C. He didn't like being around new people and places. D. He didn't think he was smart enough to learn about farming in Ecuador.